Welcome to our interview with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. My name is Amran Abukar and I'm the Canada Bureau Chief at Reuters. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
It's always a pleasure.
I wanted to start with COVID. It looks like the second wave may be even worse than the first, and cases are rising in Canada. We've had the new variant has made an appearance here. Should there be more draconian measures to help curb the spread, do you think?
Well, I think we've already seen different regions taking a very strong approach, whether it's the curfew in Quebec or a further lockdown in Ontario. As a federal government, we respect and work with the provinces on the decisions they need to take that are more suited to their regions. But from the very beginning, we knew that even while provinces would be making those difficult decisions, we had a role to play as a federal government in making those decisions slightly easier. So from the start, we delivered on income supports, income replacements, on business supports, small businesses, larger businesses, wage supports, supports for various challenged groups, and that were quite unprecedented, obviously, as countries around the world were doing. But Canada was very, very generous because we know that the best way to come roaring back from this is to make sure that people can hold on strongly throughout this pandemic as long as it takes.
One of the challenges of overcoming the pandemic and the coronavirus appears to be vaccine hesitancy among some Canadians. What tangible measures can the government consider to help overcome that?
I think, first of all, the fact that vaccine delivery is ramping up slowly, that we're prioritizing certain groups like long-term care residents and frontline health workers is giving the larger numbers of the population an opportunity to see that vaccines are effective and safe. Obviously, even as there was a tremendous rush to approve vaccines, we've done a lot of work to reassure Canadians that the regular, fulsome processes were followed by Health Canada to reassure them that any vaccine approved in Canada will be safe and effective. And furthermore, as we look at public opinion polls, we see the numbers of Canadians open to getting vaccines when their time comes continues to creep upwards. So I think people get it that in this pandemic, the best thing we can do is trust our scientists, trust our medical professionals. They're saying that the vaccine is safe and effective, and we're very confident that people will know that the way to get through this is to get vaccinated.
You mentioned a little bit earlier the generosity you said that Canada has extended to its citizens and residents here with helping them through this experience. Billions have been spent, more probably will need to be spent. At what point do you feel that, you've said that as long as interest rates are low, it's okay, but at what point do you feel like Canadians may say, this is a bit too much now, it has to be scaled back?
We made a very straightforward decision that we would support Canadians, we would have their backs, whatever it took, as long as it takes to get through this pandemic. Because quite frankly, we knew that this pandemic was going to be a hit to the economy. The question becomes, who shoulders the burden of that hit? Is it households who put it on their credit cards at 19%? Is it businesses that have to go under or lay off staff or shut down? Or is it the government that borrows, as you said, at record low interest rates and takes on this because we know that if restarting means just flipping a switch as opposed to rebuilding from rubble, we will be a lot better off as a country. We came into this in one of the best fiscal positions of all of our allies and colleagues in the G7 and elsewhere, with enough of a buffer for a rainy day. Well, with COVID, it's raining. And this was the moment for us to step up. And we still have one of the strongest fiscal positions in the world. As we are responding to what all the international financial experts are saying, which is, if you can, support your citizens, support your businesses so that we can get back as quickly as possible afterwards.
Right. And on that, I mean, we're ways off yet, but hopefully not too long. But once everyone who wants to get vaccinated gets vaccinated and the focus turns to getting the economy back to normality, how do you get consumers out spending again? What would that need to look like?
Well, I think we recognize that we are in a recession, and coming out of that will require a certain amount of stimulus to get things rolling again. Now, obviously, we've noticed that the money that we've given in income supports has given a buffer to households, so there will be an opportunity to get them to spend, and get them to spend in ways that support local businesses, local restaurants, and local tourism operators, the ones who've been hardest hit. But on top of that, we have reserved 3 to 4% of our GDP, close to $100 billion, as a stimulus that will be short-term, limited, but designed to get the economy back up to speed in the coming year or two after COVID is finally under control and hopefully minimized or gone.
Mm. One final question on COVID, and then I'd like to pivot to the South, if I may. Will Canada consider requiring people in this country to have proof of vaccination similar to the digital passports that are being developed in places like Denmark and Greece and the EU?
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it is also fraught with challenges. We are certainly encouraging and motivating people to get vaccinated as quickly as possible, but we always know there are people who won't get vaccinated, and not necessarily through a personal or political choice. There are medical reasons. There are a broad range of reasons why someone might not get vaccinated, and I'm worried about creating knock-on undesirable effects in our community. I think the indications that the vast majority of Canadians are looking to get vaccinated will get us to a good place without having to take more extreme measures that could have real divisive impacts on community and country.
Mm. One quick question on vaccine hesitancy. We've seen leaders in other countries take the vaccine quite early on to reassure people. You've said that you will wait in line for when it's your turn and let others go first. Do you see yourself going a little bit earlier now just to reassure people that this is something that people should take and be comfortable with?
I think if you accept and guess that a leader taking a vaccine openly and safely is something that motivates people to then do it, I think probably one of the better timings for that is when you're able to give vaccines to a large number of people in a more mass vaccination way. And that's not going to happen for a few more months. I think everyone understands the importance of vaccinating the elderly, people who are in more vulnerable situations, our frontline health workers, and we are very successful in rolling out vaccinations to them. If there gets to be a moment where suddenly people are very worried about it, perhaps I will revisit and go a little sooner. But while it's going smoothly, I certainly don't need to step forward in line. I think it's important that we make sure that every single dose goes to someone who is seriously at risk of either transmitting or being impacted if they catch COVID-19.
Understood. If I may pivot to the U.S., to the South, we hear that you're pressing very hard to meet President-elect Biden shortly after he takes office. If that happens, what will be your message to him? Just the opportunity that we will have to work together. It's very much a tradition that the Canadian Prime Minister and U.S. President meet very quickly to be able to talk about all the tremendous things that we can do together. Over the past 4 years, even in a slightly more unpredictable and sometimes challenging administration, Canada was very successful in advancing our interests and renegotiating NAFTA in a positive way to ensure free trade access at a time of U.S. protectionism, to work on many things. Obviously, the incoming administration is committed to doing something that is extremely important to me, which is acting on climate change. So I think there's an opportunity to talk about that, but also an opportunity to talk about all the things we can do multilaterally in the world. There's a need for a re-engaged United States in global circles, and I look forward to digging into it with President-elect Biden when the time comes. Of course. On that point of a need for the U.S. to re-emerge on the world stage, has the U.S. lost its influence in some areas, and do you think it's gone forever in some cases?
I think we're seeing a world that is changing rapidly. The rise of a much more assertive and sometimes problematic China, the shifts in poles of power around the world, the rise and strengthening of Asia as an economic focal point. These are things that are needing to be responded to. I think anyone who makes predictions about something that's happening forever or something that is irreversible hasn't been following the level of unpredictability and changes that are surprising us on the world stage. I think the importance is going to be to always look at how individual countries can effect positive change for their citizens and for the global community. And that's certainly something that I look forward to continuing to do from a Canadian perspective, but also at the G7, at the G20, with the Five Eyes, and with our American friends.
You mentioned multilateralism and the importance of that with the new administration. Looking back at the past 4 years, how much damage, if any, did President Trump do to Western alliances and their ability to meet the world's challenges? And what would you suggest President Biden do to repair that?
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of the traditional allies and friends of the United States are looking forward to is a re-engagement on some of the big themes, whether it's freer trade, whether it's climate change, whether it's protecting democracy and the institutions we have, or coordinating against some of the rise of authoritarianism we're seeing around the world. There is a need for us to work together, and that's certainly something that I know a lot of us are looking forward to rolling up our sleeves on and working all together on.
Okay. And we saw last week you commented on the events of January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. The FBI is warning that there could be armed protests before January 20th in Washington and in state capitals. What would be your advice to President Trump to make sure violence doesn't escalate?
Well, I think, first of all, my role is to ensure that we are continuing to defend Canadian interests and Canadian principles, but of course, making sure that democracy remains strong in the United States and around the world is of interest to all of us. But one of the things we did see through the aftermath of January 6th was that the American institutions remain strong. The democratic principles and the structures around their electoral process will not be stopped or disrupted by a small angry mob, however disconcerting and alarming that can be. We're going to continue to be there to work with our American friends as they go through their necessary processes. And I have confidence that Americans who are concerned about defending their democracy will do what is necessary and what is right to keep themselves and their institutions safe long into the future through this unpredictable moment.
Thank you. Finally, going back to for this section, we're going back to the transition briefly. Has the Canadian government been in touch with the Biden team about helping release the Canadian detainees in China?
This issue of the two Canadians arbitrarily detained in China is one that we have worked very, very closely with the current administration on, and I look forward to working with President-elect Biden on when the time comes. We have seen a tremendous level of alignment, not just with the United States, but with allies around the world who continually bring up the question of the coercive diplomacy that China is increasingly using, and this sense that we must all stand together because who knows whose citizens might be next, and the solidarity we've seen around countries that share the same democratic values on demonstrating that this is not the way international relations should be conducted has been extremely positive to see.
So future plan to work together, hopefully, but no communication yet with them about this case, about this matter.
I of course brought up the plight of the two Michaels detained in the United States in China with the incoming president when I spoke with him in December, or in November. But we will continue to work with all levels of the American government on things that matter.
Understood. You mentioned earlier the environment and the incoming administration's alignment with yourself on the issues of the environment. Canada's unveiled an ambitious climate plan, but it's still one of the world's biggest oil producers and is expanding a major crude export pipeline. Many might say that Canada can't be a leader on climate and also an energy superpower. How do you balance the two?
Well, I think what we need to do in terms of moving forward on a world that fights climate change is understand how to transform our energy mixes. And right now, we're still very much dependent on fossil fuels, but Canada has and will continue to lead the way to help the world get off its dependence on fossil fuels. But while we are continuing to rely on them, Canada intends to lead on decarbonizing, on promoting efficiency, and developing the technologies that will eventually allow us to better fight climate change and reduce emissions. We have brought in an extremely impactful price on pollution. We won an election on a price on pollution that, quite frankly, a lot of people were wondering whether anyone would be able to do anywhere in the world. We've demonstrated that it is possible to lead, and indeed, we know that the only way to have a strong plan for the future of the economy is at the same time to have a strong plan to protect the environment. And that understanding by the vast majority of Canadians, that consensus that is beginning to develop in Canadian politics that we've been leading on is good news. And as we engage with the United States on energy security and climate change, I know there's a lot of good things we're going to be able to work on together.
It seems the U.S. will be rejoining the Paris Accord under President Biden and has the aggressive plans to fight climate change. Canada will be able to keep up?
We have been leading over the past many years with a very strong approach on climate, but we're very much looking forward to the U.S. rejoining the Paris Accord and demonstrating and understanding that the best way to ensure jobs and economic growth into the future that will support generations to come is to understand that fighting climate change is integral to building that strong economy. We've got lots more to do, and we look forward to the added momentum and impetus that the U.S. administration will bring to a global file.
One final question on the environment. Would you ever consider taking a bolder action like Denmark's decision to stop all new oil and gas exploration, or is the plan to focus on cleaning up the fossil fuels business rather than pivot away from it?
Well, I think we know that there is a need for greater investments in renewables, which we've been doing over the past many years. But like I said, there is still going to be a need for fossil fuels while our energy mix around the world transforms. And if we can lead the way on doing that cleaner and more responsibly than anywhere else in the world, well, that is a help as we get beyond our need to emit carbon. Canada has committed to net zero by 2050, and in order to get there, we have an awful lot of work to do, but I look forward to doing it alongside many, many countries in the world who are allies to us on making that happen.
And we're nearing the end of our time, Prime Minister, so a final pair of questions for you. Looking beyond this year to a year or two ahead, maybe three, you've been in power since 2015, in politics for longer. Are you feeling the fatigue, or would you like to stay in it as long as Canadians want you, as long as your father did, for example?
Well, listen, I spent my political career not choosing to compare myself or differentiate myself from my father, but be very much anchored in what is right for me. There's no question that this pandemic has been difficult for everyone, and it's been a moment of a lot of hard work, but also a moment in which we've been able to come together as Canadians and do really big things to help not just in the present, but shape a better future. And I've still got a lot to do in terms of serving this country. So I'm looking forward to a number more years of serving Canadians.
A follow-up, if I may. Every good leader, whether it's corporates or organizations or governments, is always thinking about succession. Do you see Ms. Freeland as a potential successor, a potential leader of the Liberal Party?
My responsibility is to bring around me the best possible team I can to serve Canadians every single day that we serve as government. And the team we've built up right across the board is an extraordinarily strong team. And right now, our focus is on delivering for Canadians through this pandemic. I won't speculate on what could happen years down the road. All I know is the ability to bring together great people to serve their country is something that serves all Canadians.
Prime Minister, thank you for joining us and for sharing your views. And thank you to our Reuters Next audience.